What is up, you guys? I hope you're doing well. Today we're talking camera basics, particularly ISO. What is ISO? And for all my Spanish users, I've linked the video to camera basics up here. That's in Spanish, so you can check it out. So let's get into it. Now, lighting is very important in both photography and filmmaking. And there are two types of light. There's the physical light and there's the digital light. Now, the physical light is the one that's in the ambience and goes through the lens, then through the shutter and all the way down to the sensor. That's the physical light. But the digital light is the ISO. So a simple way to describe ISO is to think of it as artificial light. Now, the sensor in your camera has a capacity to be more susceptible to the light in the surroundings, therefore enhancing the situation with additional digital light. Now, when would I use ISO? I would use it when I have the aperture of my lens open up, I have the shutter speed at the speed that I want, and still the image is resulting too dark. So in that case comes ISO and enhances the image so it's a lot less darker. So maybe you're a sports photographer and you want to capture a footballer running with the ball with crisp accuracy and no blur. In that case, you want to keep your shutter speed up, but still the image is too dark. Then you bump up the ISO so the image is more compensated. So maybe in another situation you want to have the aperture closed up all the way to f8, so you want everything in focus and the shutter speed at the right speed, but that darkens a lot the image. So then you come to ISO. So I would think as ISO as a resource, an extra resource, when shutter speed and aperture aren't enough. Now, while ISO is a very valuable resource, allowing you to shoot in darker environments and lit up scenes that are otherwise dark, it also has some drawbacks. As you crank up the ISO, the higher you go, the lower quality image that you'll get. Now, you're gonna have three problems. Trichromatic aberration, otherwise known as noise. It reduces the color accuracy of your image. And thirdly, your dynamic range will be affected. So these three drawbacks are pretty harsh on your image and will lower the quality of it. Now, these negative aspects will be enhanced in smaller sensor cameras or lower pixels. Now, having said that, the higher you go with ISO, the lower quality your image is gonna be. So there's gonna be a lot more noise the higher you go. But it also depends on the camera. Now, full frame cameras can go very high to 4000, even 5000 or ISO. I still have a very decent image because the grain is not gonna be that harsh on full frame sensors. There's a lot more pixels and a lot more sensor to cover. For example, the Nikon Z6 has a very good sensor that allows you to go very high on ISO. But in the other hand, if you're using a crop sensor camera, a micro four thirds or an APS-C sensor, in this case I'm using the Sony a6500, if you crank up the ISO all the way to 1000, you're starting to get very disturbing noise and the image quality is very bad. So the bigger the sensor and the higher the pixel count, the less noise that you're gonna get and the higher you can crank up the ISO. So personally, I always recommend to use ISO at the lowest point that your camera goes. In this case, my APS-C sensor camera goes to 100, starts at 100. Meanwhile, some full frame cameras start at 50. So always use it as lowest as possible. So if you're shooting at night, chances are that you're gonna have to use ISO anyway. So I always recommend using a fast aperture lens, allowing a lot more light to go into the sensor. Therefore, your ISO doesn't have to be that high. Shooting in RAW also allows you to have a lot more information in your image. Even if it's underexposed, you can light it up on post-edition. And when it comes to ISO in nighttime, I always recommend not exceeding the 1600 in APS-C sensor cameras. Now, if you're using a full frame, you can go way higher, I don't know. So this landscape I've shot with different values for the ISO, and as we can see, the higher the ISO is, the more lit up the image is, or the more exposed it is. But if we zoom in, we can see the trichromatic aberration, the dynamic range loss, and the color accuracy loss as well. So that's the thing to take in. So guys, the capacity of ISO in each camera varies. So I recommend you try out and experiment with your camera so you know your limits. And if you're shooting on a cell phone, I recommend using the Pro mode on your camera or download an app like Filmic Pro or ProCam where you can adjust all these values like shutter speed, aperture, and ISO so you can get a more professional image. So guys, so this is a mini series that I'm just starting out. I'm gonna post it midweek between Wednesdays and Thursdays where I explain camera basics or small subjects easier to understand so we can all have a better knowledge of what we're using in our cameras and how to shoot photographs. And that's it for this video, guys. I hope you liked it. If you did, can you please give it a like? It really makes a difference. And consider subscribing, hit the notification bell to be notified when I upload the next video. I'm Fuentes. Cheers to all of you and see you on Saturday.